There we go. Okay. So again, thank you all very much for coming out tonight to the Meet Andrew Vietze This Wild Land program from the Concord Public Library. We are recording this program, and I wanted to thank the Concord Public Library Foundation for supporting this program and sponsoring it. And just had a very little bit. Andrew Vietze has been a park ranger at Baxter State Park for over 20 years, and he has a wonderful book called this. He's written other books, multiple other books, but this is his book, This Wild Land, 2 Decades of Adventure as a Park Ranger in the Shadow of Katahdin. And I just read it. It's a wonderful book. It has everything in it. It has adventure, it has humor, it has some sad parts, animal encounters, all sorts of wonderful things. Just wanted to, we do have it at the Concord Public Library. There's a little bit of a wait list, but not too bad. And just wanted to say a very quick introduction. In This Wild Land, Vietze tells a story with humor and action and eye for the compelling details of a life as a park ranger, making it the perfect read for outdoor and armchair adventures alike. And the Baxter, you may know, but Baxter State Park Rangers, they see 60,000 visitors each summer alone. And from midnight rescues, search and rescue missions, to trail maintenance, to cleaning toilets, Baxter Rangers do it all. And for over 2 decades, Andrew Vietze has seen it all. So I'm going to turn it right over to Andrew. Thank you very much, Andrew, for coming out tonight and doing this for us.
Well, I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you. So I just usually say a little bit about myself. 20 years ago, I was managing editor of Down East magazine, which is the regional about the state of Maine. And I was the outdoor writer and did a lot of trips to Baxter Park, among other outdoor locations. And it kind of occurred to me that I could either continue writing about the interesting people of Maine, or I could go become one. I just decided at a certain point that I did not want to grow up to be a magazine editor. And ever since I was 5, I always wanted to be a park ranger, and I don't really know where that came from. I don't know why. I mean, as a family, we camped a lot, including in New Hampshire at places like Pawtuckaway. But I don't remember meeting a compelling ranger, and I don't remember, a lot of the other things I wanted to do when I grew up were because of pop cultural things. Like I wanted to be in a rock band because of the Monkees. And I just don't know where this came from. But when I was 5, I told my sister, one day I'm going to be a park ranger. And so I used to sit in my office at Down East and watch these osprey fly by and just sort of wish that I had that same sort of freedom, that I could be outside all the time like them and just kind of living my correct life. So at a certain point, I just got up the gumption and decided that I would resign, and I walked up the stairs and I resigned. And it was very difficult. My wife was pregnant and we had just taken on a mortgage, so it was probably not the smartest thing to do, but it was sort of what I had to do. And so that is the sort of where my career as a ranger started. And a lot of people always want to ask, how do you go from being a writer to a ranger? And I'll get to that. But this is a map of the park. I don't know how many folks know Baxter Park. This is only the southern third, really. Baxter is about 209,000 acres, and it's bigger than about half of the national parks. It's about 4 times the size of Acadia, which is obviously the national park here in the state of Maine. And it's centered around Katahdin, which is the highest mountain in Maine and the northern terminus of the Appalachian Trail. And in 2022, these days, you can see down below, the park itself is surrounded by areas that are now in conservation. The Nature Conservancy owns a lot of property in this area now. And Katahdin Woods and Waters is the new national monument that is to our east. So essentially what you're looking at when you get up in this area is about 500,000 acres of, I don't want to say undeveloped because it's not quite fair, but largely undeveloped wild space, open space. The park itself is one of the last great wildernesses in the East. And one of the things that makes it unique is the way we manage it, which is we're one of the few places, in fact, I can't name another, where our mission statement expressly says that that preservation comes first and human recreation comes second, which makes us unique, and it's a little unusual, and a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their heads around that. So the park road, we have a very primitive dirt tote road that goes through the park. It's unimproved on purpose. It's in many places there's only enough room for one car. And so because the road is so primitive, we don't allow large vehicles like RVs, for example. So the park is very much a tenter and hiker kind of place, backpacker kind of place. We debate the definition of wilderness quite a bit, but it's, some people say if it has trails through it with signage, then it can't be a wilderness. It depends on your definition of wilderness, but there's no connectivity of any kind. There's no electricity. There's no cell phone service. Is very, very spotty. Usually you have to be sort of at elevation to get a reliable cell phone signal. So it's very primitive, and that's why I wanted to be there. So this is the park tote road here, and about half an hour into the park, you'll find my duty station, which is Daisy Pond right down here, and the Appalachian Trail comes up following the Nessadahunk Stream to Daisy Pond. So, and it goes about 100 yards from my cabin. The park was given to the state of Maine. This is the park in its entirety. That map showed to about here. The park was given to the state of Maine by former Governor Percival Baxter. And you can see, I don't know if you see detail enough, but the first piece he gave to the park was right here. It's the parcel that contains Katahdin in 1931. He gave that to the state. And what I found really fascinating was the way he built his park. Again, he was a wealthy, his family made their money in canning. And he was from a very prominent Portland family. His dad was the mayor of Portland for quite a long time, and they had a cannery, they patented canning. And so your soup cans, etc., your sardine cans, that's how they made their money, and they made quite a lot of money. So he came from a very wealthy family, and he used his personal fortune to buy all of this land, 209,000 acres. And he had tried as governor to interest the state in buying this property. And at the time, it was pretty much cut over woodlands, timber company lands. And a lot of people thought it just looked like a moonscape, and why would you ever want that? So the Congress, the legislature of the state of Maine always poo-pooed the idea. They never would agree to it. So he decided to use his own personal fortune after he left the governorship, and he ended up purchasing all of these parcels. There's been a couple added since that he died, which are down in this area and over here. But for the vast majority, this great rectangle that you see came into the park during his lifetime, came to form the park during his lifetime. And so he gave this first one. And the interesting thing is the next one that he gave is up here. So he had the foresight to believe that one day he would be able to assemble them all into a park. But he bought one up here, he bought one here, he bought one here. He was all over the place, really, with this confidence that he would be able to one day link them all. And he was right. Eventually he did, obviously. And so I just found that sort of foresight. We were very lucky that he had that confidence that he would be able to do it, and that he had the foresight in the late 20s, early 30s to preserve. There wasn't a time necessarily when a lot of people were talking preservation, but he saw this as a very important thing. Katahdin especially, he wanted to belong to the people of the state of Maine. So this is kind of what the country looks like. For those who don't know, we have several 4,000-foot peaks, or a few, I should say. This is Chimney Pond. This is the Knife Edge, the famous Knife Edge, which is a reet on the side of Katahdin that is 3 feet at its narrowest. We end up doing a lot of rescues up there. This is closer to this particular stream my cabin sits on. This is the Sadahunk stream, and one of my personal favorite mountains. This is called Double Top. And what I like about Double Top is that it has a spectacular view of Katahdin. So we have all these people that come on a sort of single-minded focus to conquer the mountain. And I feel kind of bad for them because it's just so much. We have a lot of fishing. There's a lot of other great hiking, paddling, whitewater. I mean, we have all kinds of things in Baxter Park besides just Katahdin. And one of the things I like about Double Top is the look. It has one of the best views in the park, full stop, because what you're looking at is just magnificent view of Katahdin. But as I said, many people don't look beyond the Katahdin, which it's a native word for greatest mountain. And when you're in that landscape, it really is the greatest mountain. But there's so much else to do. So this is a view taken from Kidney Pond Bridge. So there are 2 campgrounds. This is just another beautiful set of falls up the Katahdin stream. And this is my camp. And so that's Double Top, which we were just looking at. This is my ranger housing. One of the ways I talked my ex-wife into this adventure, letting me do it, was I told her this is our summer place paid for by the state of Maine. And essentially that's how I see it. I feel very fortunate to get to live here, and in a place where so many people from all around the world make this great pilgrimage to just enjoy a vacation, and I get to call it my home. But again, no power, no cell phones, no computers. I have all the comforts of home minus electricity, meaning that I have a hot water heater, I have a flush toilet, I have a gas range, I have a propane fridge. So I really, I want for nothing, except for I have no connectivity, which I kind of like, frankly. 100 yards sort of this way from that photograph is the Appalachian Trail. So through hikers all day long walk by and see my camp, and I see them. This is my actual duty station. So this is the ranger station where I work. You can see, I like to tell people that my name is on a building. But myself and another ranger, Charity Levasseur, both were partners here, and we split the week in half. So we do 3.5-day shifts, and it's pretty great. I get 3.5 days off every week, and I love my job, so I don't mind being there for 3.5 days, and it works out pretty great.
Andrew, sorry, David was just asking, so obviously you have no internet at
Correct.
your cabin, right? Yeah. Okay,
yes,
thanks.
no connectivity whatsoever. We have a 2-way radio at the ranger station, and I carry a handheld radio, and we have a radio in my parked truck. But other than that, there's really no comms, and no. I have a solar array that brings enough power to charge up our radio, and that's basically it. These, we often get questions, what are those? These are backpack pumps for forest fire fighting. So that is the Daisy Pond Ranger Station. And this is Daisy Pond. And it's not very large. Essentially what you see is what you get. The Appalachian Trail follows this shore and then kind of strikes off here, and it climbs up Katahdin like so. So we have one of the best views from the ground of Katahdin itself, and definitely probably the best view from the west side. Um, when I say that from the ground, you can get over at Kidney Pond, they have a spectacular view if you're in a canoe. Somehow, even though Kidney is farther away than Dacey, it seems like the mountain just is closer. It's just kind of a fluke. So essentially, this is my office. So I'm responsible for 10 cabins that look kind of like this at Dacey Pond. Each of the cabins they have propane lights, gas lights, mattresses, and that's about it. That's the only thing I tell people. Essentially, it's like a tent in that you need to bring all your bedding, you need to bring everything you would cook with if you were tenting, but you just have a really nice log structure over your head to keep the rain off and the bugs out. You can see this one is an accessible cabin. Dacey Pond is great for, we see a lot of older folks, we see a lot of families. It's a great introduction for people who are sort of new to camping because they don't have to wake up in 6 inches of water. And like I said, the bug situation is you're more protected than lean-to, certainly. And you have the warmth of a wood stove, and you have a gas light at night. So there's little cook tables here. Most people set up with their cooking, and this happens to be our woodshed. We cut about 20 cords every year, and we're responsible for cutting and stacking and putting up our own firewood. That's one of the many tasks of a ranger here. This is another example of a cabin. This is a 2-person cabin closer to the pond. You can kind of see it through the tree. This one, you could almost jump from right here into the pond. So these are what our campground looks like. And we have a library at Dacey Pond. This is the library at Kidney. I don't have an interior of the library at Dacey, but we have a library where people will go and do puzzles when it's raining. Lots of kids will draw. I mean, it's a nice place to gather. People get together in groups to eat together. We sometimes have trainings and meetings in this space. And like I said, this is Kidney Pond, not Dacey Pond, but you get the idea. We also have a library. And this is the Dacey Pond Library, and here are some of our regulars doing what a lot of regulars do, which is sit on the porch and talk. So we have serious hardcore hikers and fishermen. These happen to be super fishermen. These ladies are big time hikers. This is a well-known painter. So we have all kinds of, we have a very mixed crowd that will come to Dacey Pond, and they come, one of the nice things is they come back year after year after year after year. So I've seen kids grow and now they're off to college. And you really get to know people because they come stay for a week. And many people, it's one of the highlights of the year, and you can just see the stress go out of them and they relax. And it's just a sort of a magic place, really. You can see we have a couple kayaks. We have 3 kayaks and 6 canoes that anybody can come and they're $1 an hour, and people help themselves and enjoy those. So lots of people just come sit on the porch and chat and rock with that view that you saw earlier of the mountain. So a lot of people like to ask, well, how do you need a degree to be a park ranger? How can you just go from being a writer to a park ranger? Well, to be a ranger at my level, which is sort of a seasonal ranger in the field, you don't need a degree necessarily. I happen to have a degree in English and history, which don't help me all that much in this particular line of work. But one of the reasons they hired me was because I had done mountain rescue before. I had been on my volunteer firefighter, and I also I was a registered Maine guide, so they knew that I had some sort of competence in the outdoors. Plus I had met I had written about locations in the park, and I had met several of the rangers. So I had people who would, put a good word in for me. But what we do at Baxter Park is a lot of on-the-job training. So what you see here, this is the Maine Forest Service, as you can see on the helicopter. the Maine Forest Service works with us doing firefighting. That's their primary mission. But they also do what's called short hauls. And short hauls are rescues from the air where they extract patients. We will hike up, stabilize a patient. They will drop a crewman down, and the crewman will put the patient, depending on the situation, patients go in a litter, a stretcher essentially, or they go in what's called a screamer suit, which is a harness that is sort of from chest to knees. And when they're in a screamer suit, they pair up with the crewman and they dangle 150 feet below the helicopter. So the helicopter takes off slowly and then flies with what we call human external cargo. So this is a helicopter rescue training that we are doing with our brothers and sisters in the Forest Service. So we do a lot of on-the-job trainings. We are wildland firefighters, many of us. We are wilderness first responders, many of us. I have both of those credentials. And we do, so our standard trainings are helicopter training, forest fire training, search and rescue training, and some sort of wilderness medical training. Like I said, I'm a wilderness first responder. In addition to that, we've done, over the time that I've been there, we've done everything from mental health first aid. We've done death investigation. We have done conflict. Why am I blanking on it? We do what's called verbal judo, which is sort of trying to diffuse tense situations. Search and seizure training. We've done flat water rescue for folks that go in the water. So we do a whole lot, and chainsaw training is another standard training that we do. So many of us have certified professional logger training certification.
Excuse me, Andrew, sorry, it's just David had a hand up. I think he had a question. David, did you want to ask a quick question?
Yeah, thanks. Andrew, I'm wondering, as a park ranger, when the days you are on duty, are you available to the public and others 24 hours a day, or is there like you work from this time to that time, or is it all the time?
So the way we have it, the way we work at it, and because of the nature of the park, we have backcountry stations that have different schedules. We have other front country stations that have different schedules that are at trailheads. But the way we work it at Daisy Pond is we do 3.5 days on, 3.5 days off. And on our 3 long days, we do 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then if there's an emergency, I've worked all night long on rescues, and we just get paid overtime for those. But our standard shift is 7 a.m. to 9 p.m.
So do you think use those canoes that were in that picture?
No, I do. It's unusually, like, for example, this year, we're recently, the park opened just a few days ago. A week before that, and I had to use a canoe because my water line broke. So I took a canoe out to paddle around and grab the water line, which was now out in the pond, and bring it back to connect it to the water line that goes down to my cabin. So things like that. For sometimes campers will take canoes out, and the wind will be so great that they abandon the canoes and have to go back and paddle the canoes in. Or sometimes we also do the Audubon the loon count. So I get to paddle for my job periodically. But it's not, one of the sad parts about, there's not very few things I don't like about being a park ranger, but one of those is I don't get to recreate or hike or camp anywhere near as much as I would like to, because I am on 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then the last day of our shift, we go from 7 to 3, and then we switch. So there's 24-hour coverage. Like I said, I've been sent on missions well into the night, sometimes all night, sometimes multiple days, by supervisors. And I've also had campers come up and bang on my door in the middle of the night and say, my dad's going into a diabetic coma, all kinds of different, our cabin's on fire. So we're available as needed on an emergency basis as well. So this is another training with the Forest Service. So we do a lot of once or twice a year, we'll do helicopter trainings with the Forest Service. And then also, this is the National Guard. National Guards, they do a different mode of extraction of patients. They have medics on board, actual trained medics. The Forest Service has only a crewman who is basically there to help do the airlift itself, but that has no medical skills. So if we have a super severe injury, depending on the terrain, we'll call the National Guard because they can send a medic down. And like I said, we're first responders as well, but they have paramedic training. They're able to, we can do some meds, but they can do a lot more meds, and they have a lot more gear on their machine than we can carry, hiking. So this is myself, this is my partner Charity. And so in this case, we're learning how to do what's called hot loading, which is carrying a stretcher to load onto the Black Hawk when the rotors are moving. So we'll do usually a training with the Guard and a training with the Forest Service every year. And it's great. Playing with helicopters is the best. So what they do is they will use, you can see here, this is a winch. So they will drop the medic down. The medic will put the patient into a litter, and the litter will get hauled up and pulled into the actual aircraft, and they will fly away. So not human external cargo, interior, human onboard cargo. They also have what's called a jungle penetrator, which is it's just a seat that comes down and folds out. Looks almost like an old-fashioned anchor with seats. And you strap into the seats and they pull you up and take you on board. So it depends on where that jungle penetrators are, as they sound, it's for more, it's terrain that is not as open as they would use a litter for. So this is a lot of the trail crew, a bunch of us front country rangers learning how to do hot loading. So we do, part of our search and rescue training is, this is me with a goofy look on my face, and doing this is a improvised carry. So we learn how to do improvised carries with to make a litter, or in this case, a backpack. This is using webbing to at least place under her thighs and her fanny, and then the straps come back over the shoulder so that I could carry her and she wouldn't feel like she's always falling over backwards. And this is another, she used to run a camp in the area and used to come train with us. So we're doing improvised litters, improvised carries. Sometimes we've used tarps with canoe paddles to make an improvised litter, tarps with hiking poles. We've used backpacks. So you put the patient on a backpack and you use hiking poles with the backpack, anything that you have on hand in order to get a patient really quickly out to help. And in this case, I have only once used this sort of system, and we carried a woman down from almost at the top of the mountain, on 3 of us. And luckily she was about 100 pounds. And so we would each go until we get pretty tired, and then we hand her off to the next. And we did that sort of piggybacking all the way down the mountain. So this stuff really happens. And this is a short haul rescue in progress. This is myself. This is Ranger Nick McPherson, and we're on the A-Ball Trail. And in this case, this woman had an unstable knee. We got the call at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Oftentimes these days they will send a pair of rangers, and I got selected to be one. Nick obviously was the other. And we hiked up to meet this woman. We were told that there was an EMT on scene and that she had done her meniscus. When we got there, so in a lot of cases in wilderness medicine, it doesn't really matter what the injury is per se, meaning we have a criteria: stable or unstable. Can they walk or not? So if they're stable, then we walk them. If they're unstable, then we carry them or we extract them another way. And it's often true, like we don't have x-rays, obviously. So if someone has an issue in their abdomen, say, we think it might be this, it might be that, but it really doesn't matter. It's whether how serious or not serious, stable or unstable. These are the kinds of things we have to do in wilderness medicine because we don't have all the tools of roadside paramedics or folks in ERs. So in this case, Nick and I walked up and met this woman, and we were really surprised that she was actually mobile. So she was moving. So we took her for basically we met her at about 11:30 at night. And we got her down about 2 miles to this particular point where we knew if she couldn't go any farther, we could extract her by air, which saves a lot of having to carry, obviously, getting a large team together. And it turns out that she was not able to go any farther once she got to this point. So actually, it was a little before this. We started to have to carry her a little bit before this happened. So at about 6 a.m., sun comes up. We radio to our supervisors and we say our patient can no longer proceed. They say, let us check and see if we can get air support, or we'll put a litter team together to come up to you. In this case, they call the Forest Service. Forest Service comes. Ranger Ben Goodwin here comes down this particular line from the sky. He looks like a superhero. Patient gets put into this screamer suit, and then the two of them are extracted by air and flown a couple miles to a nearby ambulance. So they'll touch down very gently. A lot of people think this must be terrifying, but the way the bird lifts off is so gradual. It just looks so peaceful, and the same way they put the patient down. So it's very, very controlled. And we all at trainings will jockey trying to be the patient because we all want to get to fly in the screamer suit, but none of it. Well, 2 or 3 have gotten to do so, but I have not, unfortunately. So after this rescue, the patient leaves with Ben. Nick and I carry gear and some of the helitack rope, and we hiked out a couple miles and went straight back onto duty after being out all night. It's just kind of the way it works. And then it was pretty funny because there was a newspaper write-up, and they talked about how Ranger Ben Goodwin rescued this woman, and a couple Baxter Park Rangers assisted. And obviously we don't do it for the glory, but we were up there all night long, and Ranger Ben Goodwin was involved for maybe 14 minutes. So just one of those. So this is search and rescue incidents on Katahdin in 2019. That year was pretty small tally. We usually do closer to 50, 55. This shows you the locations of where we did search and rescue. And in this case, the majority are on the east side. So I wouldn't have been involved. This all the way over to here is all on the east side. A-ball and Katahdin Stream, which amounted to about 35%. That's my territory. That's where I would be assigned. I typically will do maybe 5 or 6 actual cool, exciting events every year. So maybe about 1 a month. My season's May to October. I don't think I said that. Like I said, it works out to about 1 a month, and that's everything from rescues to fires to raids on illegal camps or whatever. Just really cool stuff. So maybe 1 a month, sometimes twice a month, in a really busy year. But most of the time I'm doing your standard day-to-day maintenance and chores. This shows you the 5 types, top 5 most common search and rescue. We call it SAR, but SAR, search and rescue. And this is a period going from 92 to 2014. So you can see that what we see most commonly is the lower extremity injury, just like that particular rescue I showed you. She had a knee injury. We see lots of turned ankles. We see lots of blown knees. We see a whole variety of lower leg injuries. Number 2 is exhaustion. We call it the spaghetti leg syndrome, where people simply can't go any farther. And we don't usually go up after people unless they're actually injured. But in some cases, you have to go up after these folks if there's a storm coming in, if they're elderly, if they're really, really young. So we will go after folks in those cases. And I would add into this, usually it says exhaustion / dehydration, because we see a lot of dehydration cases, more and more these days as it gets hotter and hotter. We see a lot of people who come and think that the Katahdin is just a simple day hike. Everybody knows people who have done it. Isn't it a great time? But they're not physically prepared for 8 to 10 hours. We say 8 to 10 hours on a Stairmaster, basically. So we deal with a lot of exhaustion folks. Lost parties are number 3. The park itself is, most of the trails up the mountain are very well marked, but we find people that just lose their way. I would say that's not uncommon at all. Obviously it's number 3. And then head injuries, as everybody knows, they bleed and they look scary. But this is pretty unforgiving terrain for any part of your body. And it will see people slip and hit the back of their head, or stumble and hit the front of their head. And the final one is upper extremities. I've seen dislocated arms. I've seen broken arms. So a whole variety of things can happen to people from the upper body as well. So that's basically the types of injuries we see the most. And this is when our SAR incidents happen most commonly. And you can see this is a 4-year period. And the vast majority will happen from about June to September, July and August obviously being the peak. And then we'll have a few, we do have winter campers, and we have a few sometimes very serious injuries, often hypothermia, obviously. And we've had people fall to their deaths. We had, I believe it was 2019, we had 4 fatalities that year. 2 were winter months where 2 parties had a heart attack. No, I'm sorry, 1 fell, 1 had a heart attack. Then we had another heart attack, which was on the way up to the Chimney Pond Trail. And then we had a gentleman drown inside the park, almost at the edge of the, outside the park. It was actually the warden service that responded from outside the park. And he was kayaking and went over a set of falls and got stuck in a hydraulic and could not get out of the hydraulic. So in my career, I have worked only 1 fatality. It was a lightning strike. It was a terrible thing, 24-year-old kid. And it was not up on the mountain, as you might expect. You know, most of our lightning strikes happened at elevation or out on ponds. In this case, it was just in a campground that happened to be next to the highest tree around. And it was just very unlucky. And obviously, it was really, really hard for a bunch of us who did CPR for about an hour to no avail. He was never coming back. So one of the other things that we do, as I mentioned earlier, is we fight forest fires. This is the biggest fire in my time at the park. Unfortunately, it was right before I got there for the season, so I did not get to fight it. This is down at the very, very southern end of the park, right along the Appalachian Trail. This is a west branch of the Penobscot River. And it was only a few hundred acres. So in the scheme of, you know, what we hear about out west, it was not a huge fire, but we're really lucky that we don't see huge conflagrations usually in Baxter Park. We had one in the late 70s that was good sized, but most of the time we have very small incidents. I fought one last year that was not even quite an acre. This you can see we were lucky enough to get air support really quickly from the Forest Service. And that was what kept this thing from getting out of control. That in the springtime, in many places, the ground still had frost in it. So it would burn right across the surface really quickly, but it didn't go down very deep, didn't get into the root system because there was still frost. In some places where the ground was still wet. So most of the time though, I'm not doing anything super exciting. This is yours truly talking to folks, answering question, where do I find moose? We usually say Canada. Um, we actually have a bunch of moose in Baxter Park still, but that's probably the number one question I ask. I check in campers. I talk to AT hikers. Day users will come and will ask for maps and handouts. Unlike National Park Service rangers, I don't sit at my desk here all day long. We actually range. I always tell campers that I range by definition. So here I am just helping some folks. When I say range, we go out and we clean toilets. I maintain the facilities. So I'm always fixing screens and climbing up on roofs and replacing shingles or re-roofing buildings or building new decks or sets of stairs or you name it. Charity and I do it pretty much do all, unless it's really, really a major rebuild of a building, we are at least involved with keeping the buildings in good shape. This is me again, pointing out, this is me showing features of the actual, I was gonna say that was me looking at Katahdin, but that would be incorrect, I think. This is because this is over, she must be looking at bird, I'm guessing. And most people are, like I said, are asking about these guys. We still do have a pretty healthy moose population, although it's very clearly diminishing. I would see a moose or sign of a moose at least every shift when I'm in the park. And now sometimes I will go 3-4 shifts a whole month before I see a moose or scat or a print. And a lot of people think there's a lot of variety of theories why that might be. Climate change is the largest, and some people think they're simply moving north to get away from the ticks. We have a lot of ticks that are migrating north. And while most of the adult population of moose are safe from the ticks, the calves, we see calves that will have 20 or 30,000 ticks and just be sucked their blood to death, little vampires. So yeah, unfortunately, we've been seeing die off on that in that way. And the other thing that's interesting, as I mentioned earlier, the park is surrounded by land that's in conservation now. And the great irony is that moose like clear cuts. They like to chew on browse and new growth. So they may be going places where there's clear cutting going on. So going further afield. You'd think they would like to be in the wildest places, but actually they do that. They really love, they like to walk on the roads. They like to eat in clear cuts. So this is me late at night. You can see the gas lights going. This is kind of a mess. Don't mind the mess. This is me. We do a lot of paperwork. We have to write reports on every incident that we do. We register campers. This is me. This is my little book where I check folks in. This is me writing folks into the book. I usually do about an hour a night in my office, and that's barring emergency. This is lost and found stuff that people leave behind in cabins. You see we have a two-way radio over here. This is my handheld two-way radio. You can see we have an AED. We also have oxygen. We have a hypothermia bag. We have what we call our fast pack, which is an oversized fanny pack that we clip to ourselves when we have an emergency. And that's, with radio chest harness and off we go. So this is my actual interior of the office, the duty station. It's not usually that messy. And so this brings us pretty much to the close. This is what Daisy Pond looks like in October when I'm about to leave. So you'll see we usually get a dusting of snow, and we'll also usually get, typically these days, my season starts, it's sort of bookended, starts and ends with a pretty good size wind event. So we'll see a lot of really brutal blowdowns, and you get snow, and it weighs down oftentimes before the leaves are even off, or it will weigh down a lot of small conifers and it'll just pull them all right over. So I find that because of climate change, we're seeing more severe storms, and we are seeing more frequent storms. And so usually I always tell people I cut my way in and cut my way out of the park. This year we arrived and it wasn't too bad actually, but some years it can be a lot of, we can do, remember one year we did 14 or 15 dump trucks full of debris that we had to cut and clear. So I'll spend 2 days chainsawing downed trees just to clear the campground and the roads and the trails nearby. This is my truck. One of the big clearings. It has a great view of the mountain with the, like I said, with the dusting of snow. It gets really, really beautiful. One of my favorite times of year is in October, because by the end of my season, all the leaves are gone, and it kind of, you see things that it opens the views up. Everything gets more expansive, and it's really beautiful. You see things that you can't see during the majority of the season. Sometimes I come back as a volunteer. As I said, I'm a seasonal. I actually make my living as a writer, and I'm a park ranger because I love it. It's kind of symbiotic in a way. It gives me a lot to write about, and it also, for 6 months of the year, I get healthcare provided by the state of Maine. So that's another reason that it works out great. But sometimes in the winter, I'll come visit ranger buddies and do volunteer projects, which is what I'm doing here. So we ride snow sleds around, and we check in campers. In this case, I think we were breaking trail for some of our winter visitors. But one of the coolest things about being there in the winters, you get to see really neat things. This is a family of lynx. It's the first time I ever got to see lynx. They're pretty spectacular animals. This is a family. There were 4 in total. I don't know where the other one is. But what was neat is they would have 2 in the road and 2 in the woods here, flushing snowshoe hares. Snowshoe hares, their favorite snack. And so they would chase the snowshoe hares out into the road where they could be chased down by the 2 that are in the road. And typically this is a family unit. You could see in the day that 2 were much smaller than the others, but it's hard to make out in this photo. This is me. I don't know why they're shrinking like that when I turn the page. Out on a pond. It's kind of neat, again, to be able to get out into the middle of ponds and lakes and get views that you don't get to see oftentimes. And here's one of the lynx more up close. They really are, this is small dog size. So 25, 35 pounds, really beautiful animals. A lot of people want to know about COVID. This is what it looks like when you're a park ranger in COVID. This is me and my supervisor going to town to get supplies. And we had to mask up for a lot of the 2020, 2021, and even sometimes this year in the spring, depending on where we were. If we were going to meetings indoors and things, we had to wear masks. And back to my duty station. And that's about what I have in terms of imagery, and I am happy to take questions if anybody has some questions. I see some in the chat. Robin, I guess I'll just open these and see what folks want to know.
Sure.
Start at the beginning. No internet, of course. I answered those 2. Thank you, David. I love the cabins too. They're beautiful.
They are.
And they're, as I said, they're really perfect for sort of an introduction for folks who either are at the beginning or the end of their camping career. And we have a lot of people who just love them anyway, but they're really ideal for that. Thank you very much, Matt. I appreciate that. Somebody liked, I don't know if everybody else can see these, but Matt enjoyed the book. I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't know which photo, but I am lucky. I do feel grateful every day.
Publication.
Yeah. Is there a place in the park that you find the most beautiful? It's a good question. I think I mentioned the view from Double Top really blows my mind. That probably would be my favorite. Another favorite place that I really enjoy is in the very geographic center of the park, in one of the backcountry areas that you have to hike 9 miles to get into at Russell Pond. There's a place called the Overlook, and it's a short hike. It's about 20 minutes. I don't even know the elevation, but it just pokes up. It's about this area. And you look out and there's no sign of human habitation. And this forest is unbroken, and it's just really beautiful and makes you think, it makes you really appreciate the foresight of Percival Baxter. Another favorite, I was just thinking of, was Katahdin Stream Falls, which is really, it's an 80-foot waterfall. I wouldn't say it's unknown, but it's just a personal favorite of mine. Betty wants to know how far ahead people have to reserve the cabins and how do you do it? Easiest way is to do it online now at baxterstatepark.org. The earliest that you can do it, so we have what's called a rolling reservation system, and it's a 4-month rolling reservation system. So the earliest out is 4 months. So folks are booking now for, what is it, late September? And you really have to, they're going fast. They're very, very popular, especially places like Daisy Pond. Daisy Pond fills up traditionally from about the 4th of July on all the way to the end of the season. It's pretty much full. It's very hard to get cabins. It's always worth checking, but it gets very difficult. I'm gonna just backtrack here, answer some more of these. Is the road loud? The nearby, can folks still hear me?
You're going out a little
I just
bit.
got a message, Mike. Okay, I just got a message. I was unstable there for a second. The question was, is the road plowed? And it is not through the park. The park road, tote road itself is ungroomed. And so snowmobiles, it's not, it's very humpy. So it's not the kind of place that it's not the best place for snowmobilers. We do get a lot of snowmobile traffic, but it's not the best. The most common thing that we see are skiers and snowshoers who will come in, like for example, at Daisy Pond, it's about a 5 or 6 mile ski or snowshoe in, and tow sleds behind them. So it's a bit of a chore. It takes about a day. I mean, not a day, but several hours. Better part of a day getting. And it gives people a really wild experience when they get in there. Basically, only the staff are allowed to use snow machines in most of the park. Their snowmobiles are allowed to just go up the park tote road, basically, by a good friend of mine, Jennifer Smith Mayo, and it's Daisy Pond. That's what I get to look at every day, which is one of my favorite things. Is that Katahdin never looks the same. It kind of creates its own weather system. You see clouds hanging around it. We call it a cloud factory. So every day the lighting is different. The cloud cover is different. So it's really spectacular in that way. And I feel, again, very lucky to do my job. I do clean toilets. So I play 9 holes a day. So a lot of people see that and think, oh, I wouldn't want your job. And a lot of people will say that must be the worst part of your job. But really the worst part of my job is having to go get a body bag to go, especially for the fatality that worked. The kid was 24. So it's just, that's the worst part of my job. Do I have to leave the park on my days off for laundry and groceries? I don't have to. The park allows me to stay in. I could certainly stay in. For the vast majority of my career, I've been married and have 2 kids. So they would come up a lot to stay with me. But when a lot of times, during school, as they got older, they went to summer camps and had all sorts of stuff going on, so they weren't coming up. So I almost always would go home, and yes, I'd shop and do laundry. And most of the time, one of the drawbacks of my job, it's not very many things I don't like, but usually when I leave the park, I go and I have to write. So during the day when my kids are at school, or oftentimes in the summer, I'll get up early. I have to work, do my other job, or do errands and things, because there's not a whole lot of time. I know 3.5 days sounds like a great weekend, but when you live 3.5 hours away, and when you have to do your laundry, and you have to get groceries, and you have to mow the lawn, and you have to do all these projects, it's not a whole lot of time. And like I said, I don't really get too many days off where I'm not doing some form of work. Of course, being in the park doesn't really feel like work in many ways. So sometimes in the middle of August, when the park is just roiling with people, it can feel like work. This next question: what role do the native populations play in the park? Does the state of Maine have a relationship with them? We every year have a big celebration at Katahdin Stream Campground where the native Penobscot tribe will come in. We call it the K100, the Katahdin 100, because Katahdin is 100 miles from Indian Island, which is the name of their reserve in Old Town. And run the bicycle, it's always human powered from 100 miles to Katahdin. They make a pilgrimage every year, and then they have a Labor Day weekend at Katahdin Stream Campground where the park turns over or gives, I don't want to say gives, but shares Katahdin Stream with them. It's open only to the Penobscot Nation. And so I was lucky enough to work at Katahdin Stream for several seasons. So you interact and get to be part of that. And in recent years, we've had a lot of trainings where the Penobscots will come and talk to us, because obviously the word Katahdin comes from their language, and Katahdin is a sacred place to the natives. Means, again, greatest mountain. The Penobscot River is obviously a sacred body to them. So at Baxter Park, we've been trying to maintain and deepen our relationship with the Penobscot Nation. How many rangers for the whole park? That's a good question. So we have 10 duty stations in the park. Each of those has 2, so there's 20. I just saw again a message that my internet connection goes. I'm sorry about that. I thought it was more stable than it's turning out to be. We have 2 rangers per duty station, 10 duty stations, that's 20. We have about 6 patrol rangers and a handful of roving rangers. And then if you consider, we have about 60 employees of the park total. So about a half dozen to 6 or 8 of those are at the gates or at the visitor center. We have a maintenance staff with 3 or 4 maintenance personnel. We've got a trail crew with 4 or 5 members. We have a interpretive department that has right now 2, but usually we take on an intern or 2. So we usually have 3 or 4 members of our interpretive specialists. So in any given day, you would have a ranger at each of the 10 duty stations. You would have 2 what we call duty officers, who are the ranking rangers who are in charge of everything that goes on that day. And then you'd have probably 2 or 3 roving rangers. You'd have some trail crew. So on any given day, I would probably 20 rangers patrolling in the park somewhere or stationed in the park somewhere, which, given 210,000 acres is not a whole lot. I can't answer the question about sharing the recording. I think I believe the recording will be available to anybody who wants to see it, but Robin would know more about that.
Yes, we're still doing the recording, and we will have it up on the library's website, the Concord Public Library website. We have a YouTube portion of the website. So yes, it will be available. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry that you had the answer already. Now I see you said 4 new ones, but it popped me back to the top. I guess that's it. I thought it said 4 new questions. If there's any more, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, thank you, Robin.
Thank you. That was fantastic. That was really wonderful. Yeah. Did we have any other questions? People are saying thank you very much. Yeah. Gorgeous photographs. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you all. I really appreciate you coming. I know there's other things to do with your time, so I really appreciate you taking the time to come listen to a aging park ranger.
No, it was fantastic. It really was. Thank you. I want to book some of those cabins someday.
No, they're beautiful, beautiful,
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. You have a wonderful view from your office.
I do. I have I can't complain about my office.
Yes. Oh,
Is
great.
this picture what you see from your office right here?
You can't literally see that from the ranger station. There's a few trees in the way, but if you just walk down a few feet to the shore of the pond, maybe 20 feet, that is my view.
Mm.
And they pay you to be there. Jeez.
They do. They pay me, and I won't say they pay me well, but they pay me. So,
No, we're very, very glad you're there.
well, thank you very much. I
Yes.
wouldn't trade it.
Good.
One of the things I always like to say is that, as a kid dreaming of being a park ranger, I always thought about fighting forest fires and rescuing people and flying around in helicopters and plucking people out of ponds. And I have never plucked anybody out of the pond, but I have plucked people out of the stream. So I'm fortunate enough to have gotten to do all of those things, and some of them a lot. So it is pretty exciting.
A lot of variety. And I would say if people can get a chance to read the book is wonderful. And there's lots about the animals, the rescues. You have quite a variety of things you do every day and every season.
Yeah, we sure do.
Yeah, yeah.
It's what makes it fun.
Good. Good.
Other duties as assigned, the park likes to say.
That's right. That's right. Do we have any other questions? Any folks? I'm going to check the chat one more time, but I think lots of thank yous. Yes.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you. All right. Have a great season.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I
Take
hope
care.
everybody comes to Baxter Park.
We do too. Thank you. Take care. Thanks.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right.